Hey everybody, this is Nate Smoyer, and you're listening to the Tech Nest Podcast. This is the show where we sit down with the leaders in real estate and technology to find out what they're doing to transform the way we buy, sell, and invest in real estate. If you've got an interest in real estate and technology, stick around. You're in the right place.
Okay, we've got a great show for you today. We have the CEO, Thomas Kutzman, of a company called Prevue, and they are really working to help buyers recoup some of the built-in expenses when buying real estate. So imagine this, I'm on the site right now, I'm checking out their calculator, and I'm running the estimates on a property in New York City. It's New York City, so it's going to cost $1 million, and the total closing cost is coming out to about $38,000. But if you were to work with Prevue, you could get about $20,000 of that rebated back to you. And they've already sent back millions of dollars to consumers in just the last 2 years through their own process of how they're doing this. Additionally, they're not just working a referral network. They've got the agents in-house and they're salaried. So they're really challenging what we know as the brokerage model. I think you're going to enjoy this episode. I love the direction they're going, especially the focus that Thomas has placed on building a brand. So kick back, relax, enjoy. Wait, Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nate.
Yeah, my pleasure. I appreciate you taking time later in the evening. Both of us kind of have the challenging task of finding time to be able to talk, but appreciate you taking the time. Before we get into it too far along, I'd like to kick it off the standard way. Why don't you let everyone know who you are and what you do?
Sure. I'm Thomas Kutzman. I'm a co-founder and co-CEO of Prevue. We're a digital home buying platform focused on saving home buyers money. We recently raised our seed round of financing in September. And obviously happy to be on the podcast. Was a former podcaster myself. So always happy to make time for you.
Yeah, so as soon as we wrap up, I'm going to want from you give me the feedback. What did I do right and what could I do better?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Well, let's get into the details here. You describe yourself as you're helping home buyers in a little bit of a different way than a lot of people are probably familiar with hearing. Let's start with first, what is the primary problem you're looking to solve?
Sure. I think Prevue was formed out of mine and my co-founder's frustration with the industry. The fees are exorbitantly high. In the U.S., commission rates are 2 to 3 times what they are in the rest of the developed world. So there's clearly a high fee frustration there, but also just how antiquated the process is, how fragmented those consumer experiences are between the buyer and the agent. So we felt like there had to be a better way, especially in a more digital world, to create a better customer experience, and as a result of that efficiency, to pass along savings to the home buyers.
Right. And let's talk about those savings right now, because commissions are actually a pretty hot topic when we're talking about residential real estate. Obviously, there's the antitrust suits that the National Association of Realtors has to deal with, a lot of challenges to the structure of commissions. What are you guys doing to actually bring the savings and pass them along to the consumer?
Sure. So we pass along 2/3 of the buyer's commission we receive for representing buyers. So on average, we've saved home buyers, about $23,000 per transaction.
Wow.
So when you're looking at like an area like New York, which was our first market, the magnitude of the savings is pretty impactful. But when you're really able to improve that customer experience, to make the agent efficiency from the technology we use, it really allows us to pass along that savings that's traditional agents are just not able to provide due to their cost structures.
Yeah, I know from experience, like the topic of commission is like one of the biggest stressors. Especially if you're the listing agent, to have that discussion with your clients, but you're coming at it like you're putting it out there and making the model a little bit more transparent, so that conversation isn't, happening when the buyer or seller looks at the settlement statement, which a lot of times that's really the only time the discussion around commissions is happening, is on the settlement statement. Right. That's where feelings really get hurt, I think, or buyer's remorse kicks in.
Yeah, we couldn't agree more. When we first started looking at this problem, we originally did our research around the seller part of the transaction, given it's the seller that's signing the listing agreement. They're setting the commission rate with their negotiation with their listing agent. But buyers are unaware of what buyers brokers are getting paid, and in many cases, they're only finding out at the closing table. And there's that half truth perpetuated by the traditional part of the industry that it's free to be represented. And while it's obviously we joke about it, but when you look at it, if you're showing up with all of the money and an intermediary is getting some sort of compensation, it's coming out of the buyer's pocket. It might not show up as a cash line item on the closing statement.
Right.
You're the one showing up with all the money, so it's still synthetically affecting your price and the affordability of your home.
Yeah, that whole "don't worry, my services are free" is the number one reason that I will stop talking with an agent if they use that. Because it's just that's not true. When I hear a buyer's agent talk, they use that line as like, "Don't worry, you don't have to pay me. My services are free." That's just not true.
Yeah, and I think that's the frustration people have with real estate agents in general. Obviously, there's a lot of hardworking real estate agents out there, so we don't look at it as a combative nature with the industry. We just look at it as like we believe there should be an increased level of transparency. Mm-hmm. And even with the lawsuits that are out there in the courts, I think a lot of it is about consumer protection. It is about transparency, and I think with what we're doing in passing along these transparent rebates of 2/3 of the buyer's broker commission, it ends up being far more transparent, and it gains a lot more trust with the home buyers that we're working with.
Yeah, let's shift a little bit. So you guys are currently, your first market was New York, and you've recently expanded into Connecticut, right?
That's correct. Yeah. So obviously most people are like, why did you pick New York? It's one of the most difficult real estate markets.
It's so competitive there
in the world. Yeah. I mean, I the last time I checked the stats, I think there's 30,000 real estate agents going after 15,000 transactions every year. So I think there's a lot of part-time agents. It is very competitive.
Yeah.
But I think, if you can solve New York, being one of the more nuanced market, this will work dramatically in all of the major metropolitan tier 1 cities. We did recently expand to Connecticut. And when we look
break that one down, why not Rhode Island? They're right there.
Well, when you looked at New York City, when the first natural thing is, when your marketing channels, people learn about you, brand awareness, but there's a lot of folks that are buying in New York City, but there's also a lot of folks that are relocating from New York City to the New York City suburbs, Connecticut being one of them. So there's a natural, halo of, almost a reverse inquiry of, hey, you're helping New Yorkers help buy, but like, can you help me in Connecticut? Can you help me?
They're probably doing the commute, from Connecticut, because I remember when I was building homes in Pennsylvania, we were building for New York residents in Pennsylvania specifically. So they're doing the commute, they're seeing the brand, they've heard of it, and they're wondering when they can get it. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, and we looked at it like, when we think of ourselves as a mission-oriented company focused on saving home buyers money, the natural instinct both is from a mission part of the company and from a business proposition, going after the highest price point cities where we can have the most impact for the consumer.
Right. It makes a lot of sense. And obviously then, so it sounds like the probably next logical move would be somewhere else then in the Northeast is for expansion.
Yeah, so we haven't formally disclosed the cities we're going to. We're setting up the final paperwork on our licensing. But as part of our recent seed round, part of that money will be going to entering new markets.
That makes sense. Now, I know that we talked about this on the initial call that you and I had, but I wanted to go into how you're structured because in the I'm going to just call it the rebate business. I don't know. Rebates as a service. I'm going to coin that term. I don't know if that's a thing in real estate yet.
It's catchy. I mean, I work on a lot of our marketing efforts, so it's definitely catchy.
So in the rebate as a service business, there's two structures I find that we come across. You find one that's really just true referral network. They've got a marketing machine. It captures leads, and then they send the lead to an agent at some brokerage through some partnership, and they get a cut of that commission and they call it good. And then there's the other side where you actually do the really hard work of establishing a brokerage with agents and you're working your own leads that you're generating. Which one did you guys choose and why?
Yeah, so we believed very strongly from the onset that we wanted to really build a brand where there was a consistency from start to finish for the consumer experience. So, we know there are other models that have attempted rebates with, that being pure lead gen and just passing it off to, partner agencies. While that may work for some, we think to really, revolutionize this business, there needs to be a consistency of training, a consistency of where every interaction you have with the brand is at the same caliber. So I think that starts from the structure of how we pay our agents, the structure of how we train our agents, and the technology that we're using from the consumer experience as well as from the agent experience. So on the consumer experience, right? Like if you're passed off to a referral partner, you're going to be taken to the same fragmented, experience of more offline with text, email, etc. People calling you, and nobody wants to deal with that high pressure agent, right? Mm-hmm. Where we believe that we're actually changing that experience, making it far more zero pressure. We like to use the phrase that we're a friend in the early miles and an expert in the last mile. And we're introducing you to an agent on the Prevue platform that's trained by Prevue at the optimal time for your experience based on your interactions on the platform.
It makes a lot of sense. And you also mentioned something in there about being deliberate about how you pay agents. Are you moving in the direction of salary agents, right? I believe we had that discussion.
Yeah, that's correct. So we're big believers in investing in our agents and in our people. We think that, if a better agent will be someone that has stability in their life, that has a salary, that has health benefits, that has much more predictability in their life. And I think that's going to lead to a better customer service. And when we look at the agent journey and providing a great level of customer service, we think that agents are becoming much more of an advisor and less of the eat what you kill independent contractor. So we envision a world that's more of a sales organization, similar to software sales organization or other sales-based organizations, where you have a much more collaborative approach. And by having the technology and having the ability to help guide people via the platform, it leads to a much richer experience for the consumer by having that salaried agent that's really focused on the transaction and not trying to acquire new customers.
I've noticed this trend with in the residential brokerage space that if you can help reduce the stress and anxiety on the agent, whether that's by building up a team or, in this case, you're bringing far more stability to the income that's coming in. For people who love the business, maybe don't necessarily want to build a business and run a business. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, they'll be happier in what they're doing. They'll be more productive, which means they can actually focus on the client rather than all the other things that, as an independent agent, there's a million and one things to do. And you're talking about the competitiveness of New York, staying on top of that and the market and following up with your clients. I mean, something's got to give. So you just can't do all of it.
Right. And the way we do in our research and how we looked at the problem was, how do agents spend most of their time? So if you look at the traditional agent experience, agents are spending 70 to 80% of their time trying to find a client to work with, and only about 20 to 30% of the time actually servicing those clients.
Wow.
So we thought that if we can come up with a proprietary way of connecting with folks digitally and being that lead engine for the brand, our agents can spend 100% of their time focused on the transactions. And when you look at, obviously it's been well publicized that firms like Compass, I think Inman News had a piece on it earlier in the year. The average Compass agent does 4 to 5 deals per year. The average Prevue agent does 36 deals per year.
Wow.
So it's a much more efficient model where they can focus on the customer transaction and not just trying to acquire leads.
I was going to make a joke about something along the lines. You said there was a recent Compass article on Inman, and I'm pretty sure that was always yesterday.
Yeah, not to make fun, but we have a ton of respect for what Compass has done in terms of raising the visibility of bringing technology to the industry.
Uh-huh.
But I think there'll be a Harvard Business School case study on them about branding and marketing.
Oh, absolutely, hands down.
But when you think they haven't been as disruptive as they could have been, When you think about it, they're a better version of a Douglas Elliman or a Realogy brand company, right? They still charge very high fees, and so the consumer doesn't really save in their benefits. So we're believers. When I used to be an equities trader focused on the technology sector, and when you look at e-commerce, when you look at hospitality, when you look at travel as industries, the people that truly disrupted a category are the folks that save people money.
Yeah.
So, again,
that's the biggest audience.
Exactly. Right. And residential real estate is the largest market in the country. And so when you think of the huge opportunity here, this starts with, brokerage. So you can be saving folks money in the brokerage area,
right?
Grow, and there's much more of a buyer's journey that you can help save people money on.
It makes a lot of sense. And now, I'm also not throwing any digs at Compass. It just feels like everyone's like, I feel like I see them in the news every day, but, I guess that comes with the territory. Let's talk about the details though of Prevue. I'd like to walk through the process. So I'm a buyer. I hear of Prevue. I go to the site, I fill out a form. Walk me through the process, how I go from just hearing about you guys and inquiring to then getting matched with an agent and closing on a deal.
Sure. Yeah. So again, I like to use the phrase that we're a friend in the early miles and an expert in the last mile. And so when you arrive on Prevue site as a new buyer, you seamlessly walk through a simple multi-step onboarding that really captures what you're looking for. Price, size, location. We're not trying to reinvent the search process. That's the ubiquitous part of any model nowadays. But you quickly see an index of listings that match your criteria. You see transparently on every single listing how much you could potentially save. So when you're comparing us versus a traditional broker, you'll see that you're going to save $23,000, $27,000 on the specific property compared to zero with a traditional agent. On every single listing page, you can click a button to schedule a viewing, and our team handles it for you. You can message directly on the platform with a member of our team. In the early moments, it's more of a concierge customer success, early, easy questions. So it's not a high pressure sales that you would experience in a traditional sense. Mm-hmm. And then if you're ready to make an offer, you can click make an offer and automate the situation. If you're going to a tour, an agent will accompany you, and that's usually one of the first points where you're assigned an agent. And an agent is seamlessly then added to your messaging stream. So it's a more of a platform experience consistent with what people are experiencing in other parts of their life. So again, zero pressure, putting the control in your hands without that high pressure situation. And
so your platform allows a buyer to they get connected. You're offering up a portion of the commissions as a rebate, but they could even write the offer.
Yeah, so there's an offer automation process, so they can begin the offer, and prior to submitting an offer, you're paired with that agent. And in many cases, many of our deals are direct to offer. People have already been on the platform, and their first interaction with an agent is preparing for the offer process to discuss negotiation strategy, to discuss comps, and what helps people get there and gives them a lot more of that control. Is the ability, you get property alerts every day. Every Friday, you get open house alert emails. Mm-hmm. It really guides the behavior in such a way where it can be much more self-service and a much more elevated and sophisticated experience because everything's in one place for you. Your tour's agenda is there for you. You can see listings. You're getting an alert system. You have someone there to help you with the simple questions. And when you're ready to make an offer, you have a local expert from the team. And that they're doing such a high level of volume, they know the area and actually have more expertise than a traditional agent who only does 4 or 5 deals per year.
One thing I really like about one of your online tools is the calculators that you guys have. So I'm like, not even 30 seconds. I typed in a price, a % down payment, it figures out how much that is, typing condo, not new development. And it immediately pulls together all the closing costs, the estimated closing costs. And obviously New York City has some special ones.
Yeah, New York City has some, and some politicians have recently jacked some of them up even more in the last few months.
Yeah.
But when we think about the process and when we think about ourselves as a brand of not only savings and transparency, but we really want to educate the home buyer. It can be a stressful process at times. Obviously, it's less stressful to buy a home than to sell a home. But we really try to create tools to educate them, create content to educate them. We have a very vigorous blog with a lot of great content in all the markets we're in, and we really think that traditional firms where you're a collection of independent contractors, the brand sometimes falls down on educating the consumer. So we're taking a playbook out of the tech community of like an Intercom or a HubSpot or a Buffer, where producing consistent content and creating tools that empower the consumer. I think that's what people want. And I think, the feedback from customers, and as we've iterated over the last year or two, has really been about, I love that it's zero pressure, and I love that you're helping me be smarter in my transaction.
Yeah, I think this calculator is so good, and honestly, I think as a sales tool, obviously to some degree, you guys are still a sales company, and it demonstrates the value prop. And so, for people who are listening to this, maybe you want to do some spying on Prevue, and see how they're doing this. I think it's great. So estimated closing costs $38,400. But then right below it, save up to $20,000. Click on that, and then it takes me into becoming a new buyer journey. And I from a marketer perspective, this is as low pressure and high value lead capture as I can think of. That you're putting together here, because you're giving me what I want before I even had to opt in for something. And a lot of times, I feel like that gets gated, and I point that out because I think that says a lot about what you're trying to do as a brand, and it's demonstrated through the marketing. So I can see that that's really through and through. You guys have thought through that.
I think on the marketing side, we're very thoughtful in how we go about it and very methodical with the frameworks we approach our system with. But when you really take a step back and look at it, nobody wants to be sold. And that's not only from like your customers, from a customer service perspective with these high pressure sales situations, from the very first interaction with your brand, you want it to feel comfortable. You don't want to be, pushed into anything. You don't want to just be a generic form where it feels like it's just like, oh, I submitted something and someone's going to contact me. You have the full control and interaction with the brand the second you join the platform. Yeah.
I love it. It's so good. One of the things I wanted to ask you, and I think you probably already mentioned one of these, but there's a lot of different takes as to how consumers are going to buy homes in the future moving forward. And I think now more than ever, we're really seeing a true competition for the residential buyer. It's not just different agents versus different agents, but there's lots of different takes, especially on the rebate as a service portion. I'm going to stick with that, man. That is a thing.
We usually go with savings oriented, but rebate as a service is pretty good.
But I'm curious, what would you describe sets Prevue apart from all the other services and platforms out there?
Yeah, I think there's a level of simplicity to it, right? Like I think when you look at, iBuyers, most iBuyers are focused on the seller part of the business, but even the folks that try to convert you into an all cash buy or help you sell and buy at the same time, it's very complex. It adds a layer of additional fees that get embedded into those types of transactions. And I think what sets us apart is that one, that simplicity, and two, the transparency. You know exactly how much you're going to save in your transaction. And people want expertise. They don't want to necessarily deal with financial engineering where they need to read the legalese to actually understand the costs.
Yeah.
So I think that level of transparency really resonates with folks.
Very cool. Let's shift gears here a little bit. So obviously you guys have just closed a round of funding, and that's going to help with preparations and expanding to new territories. But you've already successfully gone from one territory or, city to a state, which I guess New York City is bigger than all of Connecticut, right? In terms of population.
From a population standpoint, for sure, and just from a population density. When we think about expansion, obviously higher price point markets allow us to give impact for the consumer, but also that population density really resonates for the agent side, where you can service a much smaller footprint versus driving 20, 30 minutes to every showing.
Yeah. What would you say though has really been the driving force in the growth?
I think it's important that it's something new and exciting. I think the level of transparency again is really ringing true for people. I think people have a frustration with the industry, and I think we're at a real major paradigm shift in that people are accustomed to platforms in every single industry, right? You can book stuff online for travel. You can book an Airbnb. You can click a button and get something delivered to your house. You can click Amazon and get groceries delivered to your house. At least in New York City, I don't know about every part of the country. We're pretty fortunate that
close.
But you can click a button and something's delivered to you within probably a few hours to 24 hours without hitch.
Right.
So you're accustomed to doing a little bit more on your own. So I think it's really the brand that's going to win this category. It has to be laser focused on the customer experience, and I couldn't be prouder of our team and building these features, the communication internally between our real estate agents, our product people, and our leadership team to really look at the problems and talk to our customers and build the features that people want and really take that customer experience to where people want it to be going, versus purely looking at it as a financial engineering exercise.
That's awesome. In the real estate agent race, you often hear agents talk about referrals are the lifeblood of their business. I'm curious, how maybe you guys are leveraging both the relationship aspect of having agents on the ground working with clients as well as tech. How have you been able to make referrals part of your business, and how are you looking at that as as a growth strategy and continue your expansion?
Sure. Yeah. So when we look at the business, obviously, we have various channels in our marketing, but now we've hit a critical mass where referrals, particularly organic referrals, and that word of mouth referrals kicking in dramatically. When a traditional agent reaches out to a former client and says "Hey, I hope you're really settled into your home. I hope I provided a great service. If you know anybody buying, please refer me because referrals are a great source."
Right.
Now, I think that's super important from a relationship standpoint. We reach out to all of our customers. But what sets us apart, when you're sending someone a check for $20,000, $50,000 back, and they go to a dinner party with their friends, or someone comes over to their new apartment for the first time, says, "This is beautiful. I'm looking to buy," and they tell their friend, "Oh, I got a check back for $50,000, you're going to use that broker. And so when you look at our reviews online, on Google, it's tremendous, the feedback we're getting. But really, I've even, in the early days, I was definitely going to more visits with our customers, but we used to deliver the checks personally. In the early
That's a
days.
good touch. I like that.
It's a great customer point to get a customer feedback. But seeing the smiles on your face when you're handing someone a check really makes it so much more fulfilling. So I think the referrals are kicking in without even adding fuel to the fire there, purely on the organic word.
That's got to be a viral video campaign in the making of a compilation of handing checks to people at their front door for Christmas.
I mean, it's probably something out of Publishers Clearinghouse. I'm probably dating myself on the real fringe of being a millennial, but I was on a podcast previously, and someone was like, "Oh, you actually used to showed up with big checks," and someone's like,
"Did you bring the balloons too?"
No balloons, but we had a huge check. One of the first couple we did. We thought it was a bit too kitschy though, but I was on a podcast and someone was like, "Oh, it was like Ed McMahon," and one of the hosts was like, "Who's Ed McMahon?"
Oh no.
So I don't know. It's a little culture gap there.
That's funny. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to pull that name out of my head, but now that you said it, I knew exactly who you're talking about. I'm curious now. So you've been up and running for a few years. Started 2015, right?
So the company was founded in 2015. We launched the buyer product of the Smart Buyer Rebate of what it is today in June of 2017. So a little over 2 years now, and we're just over 2 years since our first rebate in August of 2017.
Have you, or do you have like a thermometer or something counting cumulatively how much you've paid out in rebates?
Yeah, so we're just approaching, just actually crossed over the $3 million mark in savings for folks. So
that's incredible.
I mean, it's an impactful number, and in the last few months, and now post our funding, the pipeline of that's going to go exponential, very quickly over the coming 3-6 months, just in the backlog of deals that are pending closing.
I mean, that's powerful. I mean, that's not chump change, and that's a lot of people getting some serious, meaningful help in the closing on those transactions. Well, let's talk about the funding, because you kind of mentioned that a few times here. So you just you mentioned at the top of the show, $2 million financing round, right, for seed?
Correct. Yeah. So it was our Series C of funding, our first institutional round, obviously. So it was led by Origin Ventures. We found a great partner at Origin. From the very early moments of speaking with them. They were very clear domain expertise. They were very early investors in Compass. I believe they were in the seed round of Compass in 2012. As part of that, Ryan Friedman, one of the GPs from Origin, is joining our board. So deep real estate domain expertise, proven track record, a lot of great notable investments, even beyond Compass. So we couldn't be happier to have them. Other investments from a division of Alumni Ventures Group, Kairos, who's very active in the prop tech space with investments like Rhino, and a lot of other family offices and great investors. So we're really happy about the mix, because when you go through a financing round, obviously people look at the pure West Coast tech community, but when you look at building a cap table, it's not just about money, right? Like we were a profitable company. Obviously, we're going to more hyper growth, but we're a profitable company, and not many startups can say that. That puts you in
rare territory.
So it's more about having the right partners at the table that can give you advice and help you build good habits to grow as a company. So I think when you look down, our cap table, like we couldn't be happier with the people that came together and believed in our vision. We're super excited about the next 12 to 24 months.
That's awesome. And, congrats on doing that. A lot of businesses that even set out to accomplish that seed round, aren't able to make it. I'm curious, maybe you can shed some light. A lot of other guests we've had on the show have only just reached the seed stage, and many of them not yet hit Series A. But for the founders who are thinking about taking that step, they're just beyond friends and family. Maybe you can describe a little bit about the process of what it takes to secure a round. Because I know from having worked, working at a venture-backed startup, it's not easy. It's really tough.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely takes a lot of time, and I think during the fundraising process, it was like having a second and third job at times, because you're, I think the one key thing for all founders is don't lose sight of running your business during the fundraising process. Like put in extra hours after hours. But don't lose sight of your business, because I think that's where a lot of people get distracted and actually, drop the ball in their business. So, definitely stay focused on your business. Anybody that hasn't started a company or is even thinking about it, make sure you have a very strong co-founder, multiple co-founders. It can be stressful at times during that fundraising. So you need someone that's with you to help, shoulder that burden. So I have a great co-founder in Chase Marsh. So we really, divided and conquered. Some days there were 5, 6, 7, investor calls. Everybody's got their process. But as far as being successful with it, it's all about, having shown the traction in your business.
Yep.
And I would encourage all people, before you go out on the road trying to, pitch investors, make sure you have a story to tell. Make sure you have numbers to point to. Because the more you have as proof points, the better it is for you to go raise money. And once you have a story to tell, make sure you have a process of how you're reaching out to people, because it's all about momentum. It's all about persistence. Even some of the people in our round, like we had met with them 2 or 3 times over the course of 3 to 6 months, very early on. And like some people said no, and then hopped on the deal later on because they're like, wow, this is actually like your traction is really impressive. So, but again, all about momentum and just like finding great people that believe in your vision, and don't be discouraged. Like some people will say no.
One of the first lessons I learned in sales when I was selling Christmas CDs door to door, I also had kitchen sets, 15-piece knife sets, that kind of thing.
I thought you were talking about CDs like actual like compact discs. Like,
oh yeah, I was selling Christmas CDs, like holiday mix CDs. I was going door to door. It was a bad time in life, but the point of it was, in order to sell those CDs, I had to say, hey, your neighbor John at the hardware store down the street just bought 3 of these. How many would you like? And, while that was just selling $10 Christmas CD, collections, I mean, it's probably something similar, right? I mean, when you're talking about investors, yes, you're trying to sell your business, but at the same time, how they make money is by buying into other businesses, and they don't want to miss something that's going to be awesome.
Right. And I think you appreciate that you're so focused on the space, but a lot of people are approaching residential real estate with different models, different approaches, right? And I have a lot of, and even more respect for venture capitalists going through this process, because I think they get a bad rap sometimes. But you're talking to hundreds and thousands of companies every single year. So you have your filtering process to say, like, is this a new innovative idea? How is this different from other stuff? So it's very easy for investors to quickly bucket stuff.
Yeah.
So you really have to make sure your differentiating points stand out very quickly.
Yeah.
And especially so when you look at the residential brokerage side, people say, oh, another tech-enabled brokerage. But everybody else is focused on the seller side of the transaction. We're actually focused on the buyer side of the transaction. So I think there's already a quick differentiating point, even beyond the magnitude of our savings and our traction to date. So I think it's really important to get out there very quickly with how you're different, because it's not VCs trying to be evil people by bucketing you. It's just they have to screen because there's meetings with so many companies, so you really have to stand out from the crowd.
Yeah. Well, very awesome. Let's shift here. I want to go to my favorite part of the show. This is called For the Future. This is a segment where I get to ask each guest who comes on the show to give their best predictions based on the following 4 questions. Thomas, you ready to play?
Ready to go.
All right. Question number 1. What does Prevue look like 1 year from now?
Yeah. So obviously with this round, I think we're excited to, go to new geographies and, keep, saving people money. We anticipate being in, 4 to 5, major U.S. cities, in the coming, 12 to 24 months. So, just keep on, working on our mission of saving home buyers more money.
All right. Question number 2, what will the housing market look like 1 year from today?
I think it's going to have, different regional, impacts. Mortgage rates are still, historically low. I think there's, a much different setup currently as far as, housing, backlog and inventory compared to, the pre-financial crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're in a different situation there. Certain sections of New York, we've been growing rapidly, but there have been headwinds, post-tax reform. New York City real estate markets have been, softening over the last few years. So I think over the next year, we'll probably see actually an opportunity to, be buyers. But, there's a lot of fear around recession. Stock market's at all-time highs. We're going into a presidential cycle. I'd be remiss to say, don't be selective. You should be selective in what you're purchasing. We could see, a further softening. But, longer term in areas like New York, usually dips are buying opportunities, not panics.
Yeah, certainly. Question number 3, what's one industry trend you think will continue, but you wish would go away?
Yeah. So I when I when I look at this, I've obviously heard other shows where people have talked about this. I look at iBuying in particular. I don't really wish it should go away per se. I'm very intrigued by it, but I think there's a lot of copycats. I think there's going to be one or two big winners in that space. When I say a trend that's impactful, but I'd like to see go away, like in an area like Dallas Fort Worth. Obviously, we're in New York, but we read the press and follow the industry pretty closely. There are 9 iBuyers in Dallas Fort Worth.
I think that's one of the most competitive markets actually for the iBuyer model.
It's shocking. And we were obviously going through our financing round where people are like, what's your defensibility? Well, there's 9 iBuyers in Dallas Fort Worth, and they were all funded. And obviously we're not an iBuyer, but I look at that and say there's going to be 1 or 2 big winners in this category. Mm-hmm. So I think when I say the trend not to necessarily go away, but the number of fragmented iBuyers will go away. I think there'll be a lot of consolidation in that group, especially if we go into a recession. I think you'll really start to see those risk models be tested as you go into that first real recession, since those models have been in existence. So when I look at that space, I think there'll be 1 or 2 key winners. It'll probably be Open Door and Zillow, and I wouldn't be shocked if they combine one day.
Yeah, I mean, this whole segment's about your take on things, but I'm going to add my 2 cents here as well. I think you're right. You can only burn for so long and so many months. And at the end of the day, that model is dependent either on raising the next round or going public. And as we have all been witnessing, this year has been a tumultuous year for a lot of big guaranteed successful IPOs actually struggling or limping along. And I think that we're going to continue to see that trend in prop tech, where companies that are relying on that next round, as the ones get weeded out, inevitably some are just not going to raise that next round, and consolidation is going to happen. I think you're totally right on that.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think obviously coming from a financial markets background, obviously the IPO calendar and what we've seen from WeWork, Postmates, and other people pulling their IPOs. I think it should remind founders to really focus on your business, focus on profitability. Mm-hmm. It's not just about raising the next round. It's proving that you have real unit economics and you know how to grow, sustainable revenue models.
Yeah, that's good. All right, question number 4 here. What's one thing you believe will dramatically change or fade away in real estate as a result of technological advances?
I think you're already starting to see it. I think in the rental market, what folks like Rhino and other folks are doing with security deposits. I think that was a big hurdle for a lot of people living, especially in major cities where you have to plunk down large sums of money that are just held in these escrow accounts. So I think what folks like Rhino are doing are really dramatic. And I think, that's going to really empower, renters nationwide.
I'm right there with you. We had Omri from Obligo, which is a direct competitor to Rhino, also New York City based, on the show a few episodes back. Haven't had Rhino yet. I like them. We've chatted with a few other people on LinkedIn, but haven't gotten them on the show. We need to make that happen.
Yeah, when I was back in the day when I was podcasting, I actually had interviewed their CEO, and I was super intrigued when I heard the idea. So happy to make that connection after the show if he's game for it. I'm sure he'd love to share their.
Let's make that. Yeah, we'll make that happen. All right, we're going to move into the last 3 here, and these are questions for our listeners to better get to know you. First one here is, what are you reading?
So the last book the last book I want to say finished, but I usually get to 75% of a book, and I just I'm on to the next book just because of my impatience. But I read Marketing to the Entitled Consumer. Super intriguing book for I think any marketer, any entrepreneur. It really talks about how companies like Amazon and Uber have really raised the bar of people's expectations of a brand, of a product, of a platform. And it really discusses how all people have some sense of entitlement. So it's really intriguing to understand new viewpoints on that and consumer behavior. And any marketer, I think it's a must read.
How did you find this book? I mean, this thing doesn't really, I'm not a dig, but I mean, you know,
it's a newer book. It just came out
about a year ago. Yeah, Mascot Books.
I can't remember where I heard about it. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
They only have 7 reviews on Amazon, so you might have found a.
I found it earlier, so I can't even recall what podcast I heard it on. But my daily commute, I was listening to some marketing podcast, and the author was on, and it was just a fascinating podcast. So I immediately went out and got the book, and I actually bought the physical book. Usually, I just download something on Apple iBooks and read or listen to an audiobook.
Yeah.
The first physical book I've bought in a while, and it has all your classic, marketing matrices, et cetera, but
I like it. I like the title. I'll tell you my strategy here is I use Scribd because they do unlimited audiobooks for like $10 a month. So I listen on 2x, and then if it's a resource I want, then I go buy the physical book almost all the time. All right. Question number 2, who are you learning from?
So I think, going back to podcasts, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I think listening to other entrepreneurs, whether it's, founders or VCs, I think hearing people's stories, I think there's a lot of patterns in life, patterns in companies, patterns in industries. So I think listening to as many podcasts as possible really will give you a lot of great facts and a lot of good tidbits to bring to your own business. As far as the key ones I tend to listen to, like This Week in Startups with Jason Calacanis, he has a lot of great guests.
Oh yeah.
We recently went out to his Launch Scale conference, which was he puts on a fantastic program there with a lot of great speakers. So I think just hearing other people's journeys, you learn stuff for your business, but you also learn that it's not these, survivor bias, stories where and then it went up and to the right. You need to hear that things ebb and flow, and you're always iterating and learning. So I think listening to, other folks like that really can be powerful for your learning process.
Yeah, I agree. Last one here. What inspires you?
I think at the end of the day, when you look at anything you're doing, I think there's a certain level of the impact you're having with people. And I think with what we're doing with saving home buyers money has really brought a new sense of purpose, a new sense of mission in terms of how we can impact people's lives. And I mentioned it earlier, but it rings true. When you see the smile on someone's face when you're handing them a big check, and you think, what will they do with that rebate? Some people are going to renovate that home. Some people are going to furnish that extra room that they would have otherwise had to save up for, or maybe take a vacation or pay for that extra school fee or college tuition. Mm-hmm. So having that sense of impact has really been a big driver for me personally and for us as a company.
Let's be real. If they're under 30, it's going towards college tuition.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think nowadays, I think sometimes, people are subconsciously having less children because after the first one, they start planning for college and they realize, wait, I can barely afford this one. So,
yeah.
And I think when you look at across, whether it's real estate or children or everything else, there's a growing affordability crisis in major cities. You see it in New York, but obviously we were at that conference recently in San Francisco, and when you look at the homelessness crisis and other things, it's going to become a bigger and bigger issue, nationwide. So I think to be able to be part of that fix, home buyers is only one part of it, but I think when you can impact people's lives like that and make it more affordable, is really fulfilling.
I don't know who said it, but it was I think it was some Marine or something like that is quoted, if you want to change the world, make your bed. You kind of start from there and you just kind of move on, and you're kind of describing that, you can't do everything, but, you're tackling some of those challenges, and helping each and every buyer along the way like that. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And when you think about it, right, 80 to 100 billion is spent every year on real estate commissions. Think about how impactful that is when you compare it to what governments are trying to do and what private charities are trying to do. That's a large portion of money that would be better served in people's pockets for their lives.
That's very good. Thomas, I really appreciate the time and you sharing everything about what Prevue is doing, how you guys are working. I'm really digging the calculators. I mean, it's got my wheels spinning on how I can create something similar for the Avail landlords. So kind of cool there. But before we close out, I want to give everyone an opportunity if they want to learn more about Prevue or they want to connect with you. Where do they go and how do they do that?
Sure. I like to be very accessible for people. So, I'm happy for people to email me. It's, thomas@prevue.com. Also, obviously, I'm very active on social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, etc. It's simply @Thomas Kutzman.
There we go. And all the links and everything will be in the descriptions below, but Prevue is Prevu.com. And so for everyone who would maybe listening in the car, just check it when you pull over and get the links in the notes. But hey, I really appreciate it. Let's keep in touch. I'm definitely going to follow up with you on that referral to Rhino and others and root for you guys. Can't wait to see where you expand next. I hope it's Pennsylvania, but you'll have to let me know when you guys figure it out. But looking forward to keeping in touch and seeing what you guys do.
Great. Thanks so much for having me, Nate.
All right. Thanks so much.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks so much for listening to the TechNest podcast. Hey, don't forget you can get on the email list so you never miss an upcoming episode. That's technest.io. That's technest.io. Get on the email list. Go to the App Store, whether you found us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, wherever you found us. Leave us a 5-star review and share it with your friends. And if you've got a guest or someone that you'd like to recommend, or if you think that you'd be a great guest on the show, hey, send me an email, nate@realteampanda.com. That's nate@realteampanda.com. See you guys later.